Welcome to MBA 543, St. Francis University. I'm your instructor, Adam Conrad. And this is the final chapter, Chapter 17, Management of the Sales Force. So in this section, we're going to talk about how leadership skills can be applied to sales management, discussing the qualities of an effective sales manager, talking about recruitment and selection of salespeople, effective orientation and training practices, talking about effective sales and Salesforce motivation practices, developing understanding of selected compensation plans, and listing and discussing criteria for evaluating sales performance. So let's talk about leadership. The first thing to talk about how leadership skills can be applied to sales management. And leadership is the process of inspiring, influencing, and guiding employees to participate in a common effort. Sales management is the process of planning, implementing, and controlling the personal selling function. Leaders are made, not born, which suggests that leadership is a series of skills that can be acquired through study and practice. Leadership is communicating people's worth and potential so clearly that they come to see it in themselves. That's a quote from Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits. What's a sales manager? Sales manager is a leader, a coach, a mentor, a communicator, a facilitator, a goal setter, a motivator, and a number cruncher. Sales manager wears a lot of hats. One thing to be very cautious about is oftentimes your best salespeople are promoted to be sales managers, and what I found is that those two skills don't always coincide. What you find sometimes is the best salespeople don't make the best sales managers, or vice versa. Sometimes they do. So knowledge, skills, and attitude, sometimes called KSAs, can be useful in achieving your success. So some of the most popular topics in sales manager training programs, and you look at them, are, if you look at them in order of importance, are motivating salespeople, goal setting, providing leadership, orientation and training, assessment and evaluation, territory management, time management, developing sales strategies, recruitment and selection, effective use of CRM software and systems, and sales forecasting. Interestingly, motivating salespeople and recruitment and selection are almost on the opposite ends of this list. I found that most really productive sales managers, you really have to rely on your team. So you have to have a very good team of salespeople. So if you've done a really bad job of recruiting and selecting your people, motivating them is not going to matter. You really have to have the right people, as we like to say, right people on the bus in order to get the job done. Okay, some basic leadership styles. We have, from initiating structure to consideration, we have a matrix, these two independent dimensions of leadership. And so we have these 4 different styles. They're based on concern for getting tasks done versus a structure and concern for people. This method is discussed a little bit later in the slides. So essentially have, low structure, high consideration on the left-hand side, low structure, low consideration, high structure, high consideration, and high structure, low consideration. So you look at the low structure, high consideration, you got a leader who strives to promote group harmony and social need satisfaction. You look at the one to the right where it's high structure, high consideration. We have a leader who strives to achieve a productive balance between getting the job done and maintaining a cohesive, friendly work group. Versus the high structure and low consideration where the leader devotes primary attention to getting the job done and less on the personal items. And then a low structure, low consideration is where a leader retreats to a generally passive role, allowing a situation to take care of itself. I can tell you how that works out. Not so good. Behaviors that provide evidence of structure. These will clearly define their own duties and those of the sales staff. They assume an active role in directing their subordinates' work. Policies and procedures are clearly defined and subordinates know what is expected of them. Salespeople also know how well they are doing because the structured supervisor evaluates their productivity and provides feedback. Structure is the set of written and unspoken policies, practices, and expectations that surround the job of the salesperson. It can include job descriptions, territory definitions, call reports, and sales process definitions. The behaviors listed here indicate the structure. So planning takes place on a regular basis. They have expectations clearly communicated. Decisions are made promptly and firmly, and the salespeople's performance is appraised regularly, so you know where you stand. Behaviors that provide evidence of consideration include regular and effective communication as a high priority, each salesperson treated individually, and good performance is rewarded, and it's rewarded often. A climate of two-way communication, good two-way communication usually exists between the manager and the members of the sales team. When you think about consideration, you think about a manager who displays consideration is more likely to have relationships with salespeople that are based on mutual trust, respect for salespeople's ideas, and consideration for their feelings. Situational leadership suggests the best managers match their leadership style to the situation at hand. This involves flexibility. Character is relevant for honesty, integrity, and moral strength. Managers will be able to flex their leadership style to adjust to the needs of the situation. Sometimes it'll be appropriate to use more structure, and at other times less. This means, again, the sales manager has to be flexible. Sales managers who develop consideration and structure skills and the flexibility needed to be a situational leader must pass one additional test. If you fail the character test, you fail as a sales manager. And again, character is relevant. If you're not these things, you're not going to pass the test. Coaching for peak performance. I mentioned coaching in the last chapter. It's salespeople who develop a leadership style that combines structure and consideration behaviors possess the skills needed to be an effective coach. Coaching is an interpersonal process between the manager and a salesperson in which the manager helps the salesperson improve performance in a specific area. Coaching processes two primary areas of focus: helping the salesperson recognize the need to improve his or her performance, and developing the salesperson's commitment to improve that performance. So not just giving them the tools and the steps, but helping them recognize that there are areas that are needed for improvement. The coaching strategy comes in 4 steps. So step 1 is documenting the performance problems. In some cases, the best approach is to observe and assess performance during actual sales calls. Make note of things the salesperson is neglecting to do. Step 2 involves getting the salesperson to recognize and agree that there is a need to improve performance in a specific area. Sales managers should never assume the salesperson sees the problem in the same way they do. Step 3 involves exploring solutions. At this point, it's often best to let the salesperson suggest ways to improve performance. Step 4 involves getting a commitment from the salesperson to take action. This step may involve development of a contract, written or verbal, that clarifies the coaching goals, approaches, and outcomes. A major goal of coaching meetings is to improve performance while enabling sales managers and salespeople to maintain a relationship based on mutual respect and trust. So let's talk a little bit about recruitment and selection. Established recruitment and selection guidelines include determining actual job requirements, searching for applicants using multiple sources, selecting the best qualified applicant, and using personality test and skills testing. This personality skills testing is important. You'll see different companies who use things like disc analysis and so on, but making sure that they're going to be part of the team is key, because we want to make sure that they might be an individual performer. You hear lots of things about this with teams. Some people are really strong individual performers, but they hurt the team in the process. So it's very important that you're looking at this cohesively as a team, because if not, you'll find yourself in a real tight spot as a manager. So careful recruitment and selection of salespeople is extremely important. It's impossible to avoid occasionally hiring a poor performer, but if you use some established guidelines in recruitment, and I can tell you, most managers will tell you if they get it right half the time, they feel like they've done a good job. Determining job requirements. So will the person be developing a new sales territory or assuming responsibility for an established territory? Is the product or service well established or new to market? Will the salesperson work closely with sales manager or more independently? And how much travel is required? And what's the likelihood of transfer and promotion? So it's really important to nail a lot of this down early on, because you put a lot of effort into developing salespeople and onboarding them and training them and getting them out into their territory and developing relationships with clients, and you don't want them to turn over quickly. You really got to look through all these and make sure you have a very keen understanding on how this works. Some places this is very fluid. You don't know all the answers to these. You have to work through it. But it really is, your expectation for what it's going to look like and how you're going to manage this is going to be determine a lot of the outcomes for your team. Where are you going to find these people to work with you? So what are some of the sources for applicants? There are internal candidates within a company. You can go to colleges and universities, trade and newspaper advertising, employment agencies and listings, and more things are coming through the internet. But I can tell you that one thing that's not mentioned here is that you know somebody in the firm. So a referral within a firm or from another salesperson, oftentimes the salespeople know really where some of the best salespeople are located, and they can help you recruit. Again, your people have to be happy before you're going to be able to recruit more people, because your people are going to tell people stay away if it's not good. And by the way, one of the things I always like to say about companies is if I see a lot of salespeople leaving a company, that's what I refer to as a canary in a coal mine for a company. That's usually an early warning sign that things are about to go bad for a company, and they lose salespeople or a lot of their salespeople, because the salespeople are typically, outside of maybe some engineers, salespeople are typically some of the most employable people in a company, meaning they can take off and go anywhere and get a job. So that's a great way to watch a company to make sure that you know or identify if you think there's a problem at that company. It's a bonus material, no additional charge. Are you ready for a sales interview? Interviews vary, so you can be prepared. You got to be prepared for all kinds of questions. Can you describe the sales process? What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? And here again, you want to be very careful with coy answers like, "Oh, my weakness is that I try too hard." No one's going for that. What sales books have you read lately? You'll get asked that a lot. And it's amazing to me how few people, if you've read a sales book and you say the name of a book and you haven't read it, get ready. Because most of your really good sales managers have read a lot of them, and they'll start asking you questions about them. If you haven't read them, that's a real that's a real identification for whether you're honest or not. What's the most boring job you ever had, and how did you handle it? What's the biggest contribution you made to your last employer? I like to ask this one quite a bit because I like to see whether they take credit for everything at a company. I've had people tell me that they've taken credit for all kinds of things, and in fact, they're individual performers and don't let the team take credit. There's also this notion of sell me a pen. There's a trick to this. I'm going to tell you the trick to the sell me the pen, the computer, and so on. If somebody asks you to sell them this mouse, what they're really looking for is for what your reaction is and how you approach the selling problem. So if you start describing the mouse, well, it's a great mouse. It's obviously it's got a laser pointer built in, and it's the same color as your laptop, and it's designed to you can twist it around and make it into like a mouse shape. You start describing the features of the item, you lost. That is the trick that they're looking for. What you need to do instead is, if somebody says, "Sell me this mouse," is ask them about what they use something like a mouse for. So would you find yourself using a laptop, and are you often, or do you like the built-in trackpad versus, and so you start asking questions about the person and how they would use a mouse, and determine whether it's a suitable solution for them. Because not everybody uses a separate mouse. There's a lot of people who use the internal mouse on the keyboard. And so you really need to have that discussion with them. And particularly when you look at this particular mouse and notice that it matches the color of the laptop, you say, is it style important to you? Does it matter to you that your mouse matches your laptop? In this case, I bought it with the laptop because I liked the fact that they actually offered one that was the same color. I thought that was unique. So sell me this pen, computer, lamp, desk, something in the office. They're going to ask you to do that. The key is to not describe the item. The key is to jump in and talk about or ask questions of the interviewer. As soon as you start asking questions, it's really over. They know you know the answer. They know that either you've learned this from me or that you've learned that you need to interview the prospect and understand their needs before you start prescribing for them a solution. Why we should hire you that's an often loaded question. Why the company should hire you versus other candidates. Again, focus on you, not versus somebody else. They may tell you about other candidates and the fact that other candidates have a certain amount of expertise or this or that. And this is your opportunity to have an answer for why you're the best candidate for the position. That might be your product knowledge, that might be your customer service. Those are the things I would focus on. Your after sales support, the fact that you know how to prospect, that you know how to close, you know the process, and that you're really good at after sales support. You have great customer service techniques, and describe what those are, and you'll find yourself in a position where you'll get offered the job. Let's talk a little bit about orientation and training. After hiring the best qualified salespeople, we need to take a couple of additional steps. We need to provide the new employee a thorough orientation to your operation, your company. Provide the orientation before this person begins working. This should include a review of your company's history, philosophy of doing business, mission statement, business policies, compensation plan, and other important information like the culture of the company. Your company has a culture, whether you like it or not. If you haven't mindfully or thoughtfully built a culture in your company, you're going to have one. It just happened without you. So you have to really think about what that looks like. You need to initiate a training program to help the person achieve success, since a well-developed and executed training program can enhance their performance. Sales training program should have these three things: knowledge of product line, company marketing strategies, territory information, and business trends. The attitude towards the company products and customers, and skills in applying personal selling principles and practices. A framework for an effective sales training program should include a training assessment, know where we're at now, figure out what the objectives are, what we hope to achieve, figure out what we can spend to do it, who's going to do it, set the dates and locations for training, go ahead and do the training, and then evaluate. So it's very important to have a structure to this. I don't want to say that, but a lot of companies don't take this seriously and don't do a lot of training and aren't real effective in this. You're paying people a lot of money. It's really important to be very effective in your training programs. How do you motivate the sales force? I got lots of stories on this. Ideally, salespeople will be motivated by a mix of internal and external rewards. It's possible to design good reward systems that use extrinsic motivation. So we want to design some reward programs to focus on several aspects of the salesperson's job. So we don't want to make it just new client acquisition. We want to make it retention. We want to make it customer service. We need to evaluate the incentive program to see what plan has the most impact. And we want to avoid setting unrealistic goals. If you set quotas where salespeople can't hit them across the board, you've done it wrong. You need to have achievable objectives and quotas, because if you don't, you're not going to have very good success. Your salespeople are going to get frustrated because a lot of the earnings are based on hitting quota. So, money is obviously a motivator. We'll talk about some different plans and compensation plans. There's straight commission. There's commission with a draw. So straight commission is pretty straightforward. I mean, you eat what you kill, so to speak, but it's 100% commission. So you get paid just commission. You don't get a salary. Now, there's some situations where you're straight commission, but you have a draw. So which means that if you're going to make $100,000 this year in commission, they'll let you take $5,000 a month in draw, so that the $60,000 you've earned would be deducted against the $100,000 in commission you're expected to make. There's also commission with a guaranteed salary. So you could get a guaranteed salary of $50,000. Well, that's that one. But there's also the bonus. So you could add a bonus onto the end of the draw one. You could get a fixed salary plus a bonus. You could get $100,000 a year, and you get $25,000 if you hit quota. Or you could just get paid straight salary, $80,000 a year. So it really depends on how that works. Obviously, a straight salary, in my opinion, is going to be the least used in sales. If you're going to do a straight salary, get ready for people who are just really doing very secure jobs that are not looking to, hang the moon when it comes to sales. Because they do well, they don't do so well. They're on a salary. The only thing you do is fire them. You can't cut their pay, so to speak. Compensation planning is one that companies spend tremendous amount of time on. You have to figure out, what are you trying to do? You're trying to move units. You're trying to get to profitability. Are you looking to take existing accounts and double their value? There's so many different calculations on what you're trying to accomplish in, whether you want to move a particular product line, you're trying to sunset a product line, you're trying to go out and double your account acquisition and have more customers. It really depends on what your plan is. And then you can basically start applying different tools to that to figure out, how do I want to do it? Again, it comes back to the compensation. You want something done, you pay to get it done. So some quantitative criteria when you assess whether the people are productive or not might be sales volume in dollars, year over year, what was it versus last year, sales volume by a particular product line, how many new accounts did we acquire, the amount of new account sales. Profitability is one we look at a lot now. So how much was each account worth to us? This also allows us to fire accounts that are not profitable. And so then we also have qualitative criteria, because if you just go by the numbers, you could have some salespeople who really tear it up in dollars in accounts, but also tear up all your internal staff. So their attitude and product knowledge and their interpersonal communication skills and how they collaborate with the team can all, you can literally have a salesperson just tear up your organization because they're terrible at the qualitative criteria. They get you some dollars, and this happens a lot in companies because they're selling well. We let them get away with all kinds of things you wouldn't normally. Because they're bringing in the volume. And what you find is that they may be harming your organization more than they're helping. So you have to be very careful about that. But I've got all kinds of stories on compensation models from, offering people the lease of a brand new Corvette for the year. If they hit quota, they get hit quota again next year. If they get if they want to keep it. I mean, all kinds of things. Trips, abroad. You name it. We've come up with all kinds of things. Here's a $10,000 voucher to go travel somewhere. So, just all kinds of things you can do with sales compensation and with rewards. Many companies do a sales reward trip. So if you hit quota for the year, senior management and sales management will go with the top salespeople, and they'll go on a quota trip. On a cruise, they'll go to an island. It's all expenses paid. So there's all kinds of things you can do and all kinds of really exciting things you can do from a sales management standpoint. And to wrap up this chapter, we talked about a bunch of different things with the recruiting and compensation, but to wrap up the whole course, this is the last chapter in the whole course. To bring it all together is really a sales career is an exciting opportunity for earnings. It's an exciting opportunity to control your own schedule. It's a great way. It's a great personal satisfaction for a lot of folks in their career, but it's a lot of hard work. It's not for everybody, but it is also something that can be learned. You often hear that salespeople are born. I think there's characteristics that people are born with that help them in sales, but I think, and I've proven that you can teach people to sell at every level. It really comes down to your commitment, to your passion, and to your desire, along with your hard work. To achieve your goals. So I hope you've enjoyed the class. Open to your comments and suggestions, and hope you have a great semester. This is the end of chapter 17.